They belittled her earth power, until she broke the training floor with her punch. Sierra Lawson stood in the middle of the training hall, surrounded by alien warriors who towered over her. The cold metallic floor beneath her feet hummed with the hum of energy that powered the vast intergalactic training facility. All around her, soldiers from across the galaxy trained in various forms of combat, some floating in the air, others manipulating gravitational fields, and a few practicing with glowing energy blades. Sierra, however, was just a human, a simple Earth-born woman with nothing but her fists and her will. Her eyes flicked to the others, their chiseled faces full of arrogance, sneers of superiority dancing on their lips. They whispered among themselves, casting sideways glances in her direction. None of them believed she could do anything here. Humanity, to them, was nothing more than an afterthought in the vast galactic community. Earth was a distant world, full of people who hadn't even figured out faster-than-light travel yet. How could a human like Sierra ever hope to match the strength of these species, many of whom had advanced technologies that made Earth's best look like child's play? Sierra didn't care about their looks or their muttered words. She had been training for this moment for years, since Earth was first invited into the galactic fold. They had wanted to prove themselves, and she had been one of the first to enlist in the Galactic Defense Force, not just as a representative of Earth, but as a person who wanted to make a difference. Yet every time she stepped onto the training floor, she felt the eyes of the galaxy's elite upon her, watching, waiting for her to fail. "Another human," Draxer sneered, his voice low but carrying across the room. He was one of the largest, most fearsome of the alien soldiers. A Krathar, a species known for its brute strength and merciless nature in combat. His skin was a dark, mottled purple, and his red eyes glowed with disdain. His body was built like a mountain, with muscles that rippled under his armored exoskeleton. "Let's see if this one lasts longer than the others." Sierra clenched her fists but said nothing. She had heard this before. Every day it was the same, mocked for her human limitations, her supposed lack of skill, her inability to be on the same level as the other warriors. But she wasn't here to prove anything to them. She was here to prove something to herself. She had trained in every fighting style Earth had to offer, from boxing to Brazilian jiu-jitsu to ancient martial arts passed down through her family. She didn't have alien strength or psychic powers, but she had her body, her determination, and her mind. Her first trial was about to begin. She stood alone in the center of the arena, facing Draxer, who was clearly relishing the moment. The alien soldiers gathered around the perimeter, eager to watch the inevitable show. The holographic audience, programmed to reflect every species' opinions, buzzed with anticipation. They expected her to fail. They expected her to be crushed by the Krathar's overwhelming strength. "You've got this, Sierra," she muttered to herself, steadying her breath. The training session began with the flick of a switch. Gravity within the arena shifted slightly, becoming heavier as the simulation activated. The floor lit up in different zones of active training fields, hazardous terrain, low-gravity sections, and floating platforms, all designed to test speed, strength, and adaptability. Draxer wasted no time. He lunged toward her with a terrifying roar, his massive fists raised to strike. Sierra instinctively sidestepped, narrowly avoiding the punch, but the force of the swing created a shockwave that sent her stumbling back. Her heart raced. This is real. This isn't just a practice. She had trained for months, but facing someone like Draxer, someone who could tear through metal with a single blow, was a whole different challenge. He was fast, much faster than she expected. His strength was unimaginable, but she wouldn't back down. She pivoted, trying to use his momentum against him, just like her Earth-based trainers had taught her. But her foot slipped on the slick surface of the arena, and Draxer took the opening. His fist slammed into her side, sending her crashing to the ground. Pain exploded through her ribs, but Sierra gritted her teeth and forced herself up. "Pathetic," Draxer sneered as he loomed over her. "Is this all Earth has to offer? A soft, squishy little human with no real power?" She could feel the eyes of the other soldiers on her. Some were smirking, others shaking their heads in disappointment. She wanted to run, she wanted to curl up and hide, but she couldn't. Not here, not now. She refused to let them win, not even in their mockery. Sierra staggered to her feet, breathing heavily, but there was a fire in her eyes now. She wasn't going to let this alien, this monster, make her feel small. Draxer raised his fist again, ready to strike. This time, she didn't dodge. Instead, she reached out and grabbed his wrist, locking her fingers around his thick forearm. The force of his punch collided with her chest, but she held on, using the momentum to pull him off balance. Her legs moved as though guided by instinct, and she twisted his arm behind his back, forcing him down to his knees. For a moment, Draxer was caught off guard, the surprise evident in his glowing eyes. He had expected her to fall. He had expected her to break. But she wasn't done. He growled and threw his weight forward, knocking Sierra off of him. She landed with a hard thud but didn't stay down. Pushing herself up, she faced him once more, not a single ounce of fear in her heart. Draxer stood tall, his face twisted in irritation. "You're persistent, I'll give you that," he muttered, rubbing his arm. "But persistence won't save you in battle." Sierra didn't respond. She simply wiped the blood from her lip, her eyes focused, her stance widening. She had to focus. She had to be smarter. This fight wasn't about raw strength. It was about agility, strategy, and heart. And she had something Draxer didn't: human determination. The fight continued, with Sierra using every technique she knew to evade his crushing blows. She ducked, weaved, and countered when she could, her fists striking in quick jabs aimed at his weak points. But it wasn't enough. Draxer was too strong. Every blow that connected with his body felt like hitting a wall, and every time he struck her, it sent shockwaves of pain through her chest. But Sierra wasn't going to give up. She couldn't. She had to prove that humans could stand alongside these warriors, that Earth's power wasn't something to be laughed at. She pushed through the pain, dodging yet another punch, then springing forward. Her right fist connected with his midsection. She felt a surge of energy, a moment of victory, until Draxer twisted, grabbing her by the arm and throwing her to the ground with brutal force. The impact was jarring, and Sierra felt the air leave her lungs. But even as she lay on the floor, struggling to breathe, she knew one thing: she wasn't done yet. "Is that all, human?" Draxer taunted, stepping closer. Sierra's hands clenched into fists again, her body bruised but unbroken. She wasn't finished. Not yet. Sierra stood slowly, wiping the blood from her split lip with the back of her hand. Her chest burned with every breath, her limbs trembling from the force of the blows she had taken. She could feel the eyes of the alien soldiers on her, the looks of disbelief and even some pity. But there was something else in their gazes now, something that hadn't been there before. It was respect. Maybe not much, but it was there. Draxer loomed over her, his eyes narrowing in annoyance. He had underestimated her. He had thought that Earth's warriors would be weak, slow, and easily crushed under the weight of superior strength. But Sierra wasn't weak. She was human. And that meant she had something no alien could understand, a relentless will that refused to break. "You still have a lot to learn, human," Draxer growled, his voice low and full of venom. "But I'll give you credit, you're tougher than you look." Sierra's heart pounded in her chest, but she didn't let it show. She had learned long ago that letting emotions cloud your focus was a dangerous mistake, especially in combat. She straightened up, meeting Draxer's gaze with a quiet intensity. "I'm just getting started," she replied, her voice steady. The alien's lips curled into a grin, though there was no humor in it. "We'll see about that." The training floor reset itself, the environment shifting to a new combat scenario. The gravity increased slightly, making it harder to move, but Sierra was used to that now. She had spent the last few weeks training in various conditions, adjusting to each new challenge with a quiet determination. Her muscles were sore, her body aching, but she refused to show any sign of weakness. As the simulation began, Draxer charged at her again, faster this time. His enormous fists swung in wide arcs, aiming to knock her off her feet with sheer power. Sierra sidestepped, narrowly avoiding the first strike. She was faster than he was, but his size and strength made him a formidable opponent. She needed to be careful. Her instincts kicked in. She ducked under another wild punch and darted forward, aiming a sharp jab at his ribs. But he was ready for her. His large hand grabbed her wrist before she could land the blow, twisting her arm painfully. The pain shot through her, but Sierra gritted her teeth and used her free hand to push off his chest. With a swift motion, she broke free, rolling backward to create distance between them. Draxer growled in frustration, clearly irritated by her persistence. "You'll never win," he sneered. "You're just a human. No matter how much you train, you'll never be more than a weakling." Sierra didn't reply. She didn't need to. She knew what he thought of her. She had heard the same words from others: weakling, primitive, insignificant. But she wasn't fighting to prove them wrong. She was fighting for herself. The simulation shifted again, this time placing them in a low-gravity zone. Sierra immediately felt the difference in the air, her body lighter than before, her movements quicker. Draxer, however, seemed unaffected. His massive frame still moved with terrifying speed, his punches coming faster than she had expected. But this time, Sierra was ready. She had trained in zero-gravity environments, learned how to use her surroundings to her advantage. She pushed off the floor with both feet, launching herself into the air. She twisted mid-flight, landing behind Draxer and driving her elbow into the back of his head. The blow wasn't enough to take him down, but it made him stagger forward, momentarily disoriented. Sierra didn't wait for him to recover. She was already moving again, using the low gravity to her advantage as she spun and kicked, landing a powerful blow to his side. He roared in pain, his massive body shaking with the force of her strike. She felt a surge of satisfaction but didn't let it cloud her focus. She had to keep pushing, she had to keep moving. Draxer recovered quickly, his anger turning to fury. He swung at her again, but Sierra was ready this time. She ducked, narrowly avoiding his punch, and spun low, sweeping his legs out from under him. The Krathar warrior hit the floor with a heavy thud, but he wasn't down for long. He roared in fury, grabbing her by the ankle and yanking her toward him. Sierra barely had time to react before he slammed her into the floor, her head ringing from the impact. She groaned, disoriented, but forced herself to stay conscious. She couldn't let him win, not like this. Draxer stood over her, his face twisted in a snarl. "I told you," he growled. "You can't win, you're nothing compared to me." Sierra's mind raced, her vision blurred as she tried to shake off the dizziness. She couldn't let him break her. She had come too far, she had fought too hard. With every ounce of strength she had left, she kicked out, sending her foot into his side. The force of the blow caught him off guard, and he stumbled sideways, releasing her. Sierra took the opportunity to roll out of his reach, gasping for air. The room was spinning, her muscles aching from the constant strain, but she didn't stop. She wouldn't stop. As Draxer charged again, Sierra realized something. She couldn't keep playing his game. She couldn't keep trying to fight him on his terms. She had to make him fight on hers. With a grunt of determination, she shot to her feet, launching herself at him with everything she had. She didn't aim for his head or his chest this time. Instead, she aimed low, kicking his legs out from under him once again. But this time, as he stumbled, she followed up with a devastating punch to his midsection. Draxer gasped as the air was knocked out of him. His eyes widened in surprise, his body crumpling to the ground in a heap. The arena fell silent. The other soldiers stared, stunned into disbelief. For the first time they saw it, the raw power of a human fighting back. Sierra stood over him, her chest heaving with exertion. She had done it. She had shown them. She had shown Draxer that Earth's warriors were not to be underestimated. Draxer groaned from the floor, struggling to push himself up. His massive frame was battered, but his pride was even more wounded. "You're lucky," he muttered, though his voice lacked its usual venom. "This isn't over." Sierra didn't respond. She didn't need to. She had proven what she needed to prove. She had shown the galaxy that humans, no matter how small or outmatched they seemed, had the heart and will to stand tall against anything. The simulation ended, the gravity returning to normal and the training floor powered down. Sierra stood there, catching her breath as the others slowly began to applaud. At first it was tentative, unsure, but then it grew louder. She looked around, meeting the eyes of the aliens who had once mocked her. They no longer saw a weakling. They saw something else entirely. Sierra didn't smile. She didn't need to. The message had been delivered loud and clear. She had earned their respect, not through her strength, but through her resolve, her heart, and her unwavering belief that she could stand tall, even when the odds were stacked against her. And that was more powerful than any alien technology or advanced ability. It was the power of humanity. Sierra stood at the edge of the training hall, still catching her breath. The applause of the soldiers around her slowly died down, replaced by murmurs of surprise and respect. She didn't need to look around to know that they were talking about her. Their voices, no longer mocking, were filled with a mix of curiosity and admiration. She had done the impossible. She had stood up to Draxer, a Krathar, and proved that Earth's warriors had something no alien could replicate: the will to fight and survive no matter the odds. Her body ached, bruised, and battered from the fight, but she stood tall. The sting in her chest, the throbbing in her limbs, it was all worth it. She had shown them. She had shown herself. And for the first time since she had stepped onto this alien world, Sierra felt a sense of pride in what it meant to be human. But the fight wasn't over, not by a long shot. The instructors, who had been silent throughout the simulation, now walked toward her, their expressions unreadable. They were a mix of alien species, beings who had seen thousands of warriors from countless worlds. They were experts and they had watched her every move. Sierra straightened as they approached, her heart pounding in anticipation. The lead instructor, a tall, spindly being with translucent skin that shimmered under the artificial light, stopped in front of her. Its eyes, a deep shade of violet, studied her with an intensity that made her feel like she was being weighed, measured. "You've proven yourself human," the instructor said in a smooth, melodic voice, the translation device on its collar ensuring Sierra could understand. "But this is only the beginning. What you've done here today is impressive, yes, but you still have much to learn." Sierra nodded, not bothered by the instructor's words. She knew this was just the start. She hadn't come here to rest on her laurels. She had come here to train, to grow, to become better than anyone thought possible. The instructor motioned to Draxer, who was still recovering from the fight, rubbing his sore body as he stood off to the side. "You've earned a place in the advanced training sessions. We'll see how well you can truly perform against warriors who have mastered their skills." Sierra's heart skipped a beat. Advanced training. She had never expected to be invited to such a level. She knew that many of the soldiers in the facility had trained for years, honing their abilities since childhood. But now she was going to join them. She had earned her place. "Thank you," she said, keeping her voice steady. "I won't let you down." The instructor gave a brief nod before turning away. The other soldiers, still watching her, dispersed to resume their own training. Sierra remained where she was, her mind racing. Advanced training would be nothing like what she had faced so far. The challenges would be harder, the opponents more powerful. She had only scratched the surface of what was expected from her, but she couldn't help feeling a sense of accomplishment. She had faced one of the strongest warriors in the galaxy and lived to tell the tale. That in itself was something worth celebrating. The days that followed were a blur of intense training and harsh lessons. The facility's advanced training sessions were unlike anything Sierra had experienced before. The gravity shifts were more extreme, the combat simulations more complex, and the opponents even more dangerous. Sierra threw herself into her training with everything she had. Each day, she faced new challenges, alien warriors with abilities she couldn't even comprehend. Some could control fire, others could manipulate gravity, and a few had telekinetic powers. But Sierra wasn't deterred. She learned to adapt, to think faster, to use her human instincts to counter their advanced abilities. One day, during a particularly brutal combat session, Sierra found herself face-to-face with an alien from the Zorathi species. It was a creature unlike any she had ever seen, tall, thin, with black, leathery skin that seemed to shimmer in the light. Its eyes were bright yellow, and its teeth were sharp like knives. The Zorathi was a specialist in speed and agility, able to move so fast that it was nearly impossible to track. Sierra had to think fast. She had learned to rely on her instincts in the past, but this opponent was different. The Zorathi's speed was so overwhelming that Sierra barely had time to react. It darted toward her, slashing at her with its razor-sharp claws. She barely managed to block the first strike, but the second hit her side, leaving a gash that stung with a sharp pain. The blood from the wound stained her shirt, but Sierra didn't flinch. She couldn't afford to. She pushed through the pain and used her knowledge of Earth's martial arts to try and find an opening. The Zorathi was quick, but its attacks were predictable. It was all about timing. She waited for the right moment, then moved. With a sudden twist of her body, Sierra launched herself at the Zorathi, using its own momentum against it. She grabbed its arm and spun, throwing it off balance. The Zorathi staggered, and Sierra saw her chance. She drove her knee into its midsection, knocking the wind out of it. The Zorathi gasped for air, its yellow eyes wide with surprise. Sierra didn't stop. She pressed the advantage, landing a series of quick strikes that forced the Zorathi to retreat. It scrambled backward, clearly surprised by her ability to keep up. The instructors, who had been watching from the sidelines, were silent. Sierra didn't know what they were thinking, but she didn't care. She was in the zone, her body moving with fluid precision. She wasn't just fighting for her place here, she was fighting for something deeper. She was fighting for Earth, for humanity's right to be seen as more than just a footnote in the galaxy. The Zorathi recovered quickly, its agility returning as it circled around her. It was waiting for her to make a mistake to let her guard down, but Sierra didn't fall for it. She had learned one important lesson during her training: always expect the unexpected. She didn't rush in this time. She waited, watching the Zorathi's movements carefully. Then, when it made its move, she struck first. The battle raged on for several more minutes, but in the end, it was Sierra who came out on top. The Zorathi, exhausted and clearly overwhelmed by her persistence, finally conceded defeat. It collapsed to the ground, panting heavily, its claws twitching with the effort to stay conscious. Sierra stood over it, breathing heavily, her body sore and bruised from the fight. But she didn't feel the pain. She felt something else: pride. She had faced an opponent stronger and faster than her and had won. She had proven once again that Earth's warriors weren't to be underestimated. As the simulation ended and the gravity returned to normal, the Zorathi slowly got to its feet. It nodded to her, a sign of respect that spoke volumes. It didn't need to say anything. Its acknowledgement was all she needed. The days turned into weeks, and Sierra's reputation grew. The more she trained, the more the others began to see her for what she was: a force to be reckoned with. The once distant aliens who had mocked her now watched in awe as she faced challenge after challenge, each victory adding to her growing legend. Even Draxer, who had once belittled her, now looked at her with a begrudging respect. The Krathar had never encountered a human like Sierra before, someone who refused to give up no matter the odds. But Sierra knew she hadn't won yet. She had proven that humans could hold their own in a galaxy full of powerful species, but there was still much more to learn. She had to continue pushing herself, continue breaking through her own limits. The road ahead was long, but Sierra was ready for whatever it held. She wasn't fighting for the galaxy's approval. She wasn't fighting to become the strongest warrior. She was fighting for Earth. She was fighting for humanity's place among the stars. And she would not stop until she had earned it. Sierra's days in the training facility had become a blur of constant motion, endless drills, combat sessions, and moments of self-reflection. The pressure to keep proving herself, to show that Earth was more than just a footnote in the galaxy, weighed on her shoulders. Yet with every day, every fight, every victory, Sierra felt herself growing stronger. The bruises on her body were reminders of the struggle, but they were also proof that she was making progress. She had faced dozens of opponents from different species, each with their own unique abilities and combat styles. Some were strong, others fast, and a few even possessed strange powers that defied explanation. But Sierra had learned something important about herself through every fight. She didn't need to be the strongest, the fastest, or the most powerful. What made her dangerous was her persistence. She could adapt, she could learn, and most importantly, she refused to quit. The latest challenge she faced was a test unlike any other. The advanced training session was being held in a new, experimental environment designed to push her limits in ways she hadn't anticipated. It was a simulation of a war zone, a series of shifting terrains, from dense forests to open fields to crumbling cities under attack. Her objective: to survive, to outlast the alien soldiers she would be pitted against. Sierra stood at the entrance to the war zone simulation, her heart pounding in her chest. Her equipment was minimal, a lightweight exosuit designed to enhance her strength and speed, but it wasn't anything compared to the advanced armor the other soldiers wore. She didn't need it. She had learned to rely on her body, her instincts, and her mind. The doors opened and Sierra stepped into the simulation. The first thing she noticed was the silence. It was a battlefield, yet there was no sound except for her own breathing. The air was thick with tension, the faint smell of smoke and gunpowder hanging in the air. She could hear the distant rumble of explosions and the crackle of energy weapons firing in the distance. She was alone for now, but she knew that wouldn't last long. The first soldier to appear was an alien from the Velker species, fast, agile, and equipped with an energy blade that could cut through metal. Its red eyes glowed with malice as it locked onto Sierra, its feet shifting silently on the ground as it crouched into a combat stance. Sierra didn't hesitate. She knew what had to be done. The Velker moved in an instant, its blade aimed at her chest. It was lightning fast, faster than anything she had faced before. But Sierra had learned how to anticipate the movements of her opponents. She dodged to the side, feeling the heat of the blade as it sliced through the air just inches from her. She pivoted, using the momentum to her advantage, and struck. Her fist connected with the Velker's jaw, sending it staggering back. The alien snarled, its eyes burning with fury. It was quick to recover, charging at her again. This time it swung its energy blade with lethal precision, each strike coming faster than the last. Sierra's heart raced, her mind calculating every move. She ducked under one slash, then sidestepped another, narrowly avoiding the blade's edge. She couldn't keep this up forever. The Velker's speed was unmatched, and if she didn't act soon, she would be overwhelmed. In that split second, she realized what she had to do. She waited for the right moment, watching the alien's movements closely. As the Velker swung its blade again, Sierra ducked low, sliding under its attack. She reached out, grabbing its arm and using its own momentum to throw it off balance. In one fluid motion, she swept the alien's legs out from under it, sending it crashing to the ground. Before it could react, Sierra was on top of it, pinning it to the ground with her knee in its chest. She held its energy blade, now in her hand, poised above its throat. The Velker's red eyes flashed with defiance, but Sierra could see the doubt creeping into them. It had underestimated her. She had won. The simulation ended with a loud beep, signaling her victory. The battlefield shifted again, and Sierra took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. That had been close. But she had learned something important. In a fight, it wasn't enough to rely on strength alone. Strategy, timing, and instinct were just as important. Her next opponent appeared moments later. This time, it was a member of the Yathar species, an alien race known for its ability to manipulate gravity. The Yathar was smaller than the Velker, but far more dangerous. It hovered just above the ground, its glowing blue eyes scanning the environment. The air around it shimmered, a sign that it was preparing to alter the gravity in the area. Sierra didn't wait to see what it would do. She charged forward, using her exosuit's enhanced strength to close the distance quickly. But as she neared, the gravity shifted. Sierra's body felt as if it weighed 10 times more, and she stumbled, her movements sluggish. The Yathar cackled, its voice high-pitched and mocking. "You cannot escape," it hissed, its voice echoing in the thickened atmosphere. Sierra gritted her teeth. She had faced gravity manipulation before, but this was unlike anything she had encountered. She could barely move, her body fighting against the heavy pull. But she wasn't about to give up. She had learned to fight through pain and exhaustion, to keep going even when everything seemed impossible. With every ounce of strength, Sierra pushed through the gravity, her legs burning with effort. She forced herself to stand tall, focusing on the Yathar's movements. It was flying in tight circles around her, using its ability to control gravity to stay just out of reach. But Sierra knew its weakness. The Yathar could manipulate gravity, but it couldn't control its own momentum. Sierra waited for the right moment. As the Yathar flew toward her, she dropped to the ground, using the extra weight to anchor herself. Then with a swift motion, she kicked out, aiming for the Yathar's midsection. Her foot connected with a satisfying crack, and the alien was sent spiraling out of control, its body crashing to the ground with a loud thud. It lay there, stunned, struggling to regain its balance. Sierra didn't wait for it to recover. She was on it in an instant, pinning it to the ground with one hand and holding its gravity manipulation device with the other. She twisted it from its grasp, deactivating its control over the environment. The Yathar let out a final, defeated hiss as the gravity returned to normal. Sierra stood up, breathing heavily, her body aching from the strain. But she had won again. The Yathar, like the Velker before it, had underestimated her. She wasn't just a human from Earth. She was a warrior, and she had earned her place here. As the simulation ended and the battlefield faded, Sierra found herself standing alone in the middle of a quiet, empty room. The air was still, the only sound the heavy beating of her heart in her chest. She had passed every test, defeated every opponent that had been thrown her way. But the true challenge was still ahead. The final test was yet to come. Sierra knew that the hardest part wasn't the training. It wasn't the fights, the bruises, or the pain. The hardest part was maintaining the drive to keep pushing forward. The hardest part was not letting herself get complacent, not letting the victories go to her head. There was always someone stronger, faster, more powerful. But that didn't matter. What mattered was that she kept moving forward. She wasn't done yet. She couldn't stop now. Earth had a place in this galaxy, and Sierra was going to make sure the galaxy knew that. She wasn't fighting just for herself anymore. She was fighting for all of humanity. And no one, not the Velker, not the Yathar, not even the Krathar, was going to stand in her way. Sierra stood at the edge of the training facility, her breath heavy and her muscles sore from the intense battles she had just faced. Her body was covered in bruises, cuts, and sweat, but she didn't care. She had made it through another test. She had pushed herself harder than ever before, and now the final challenge awaited her. She had earned her place here, among some of the galaxy's fiercest warriors, but one final trial stood between her and complete acceptance. She knew this would be her hardest fight yet. The facility was quiet now, the usual hum of energy in the air replaced by an eerie stillness. The previous tests had been tough, but they were nothing compared to what lay ahead. The other soldiers, the aliens who had once laughed at her, had all taken their turn, but none of them had faced what she was about to. The final test was designed to break even the strongest among them. Her mind was focused. She knew that the final test wasn't just about fighting. It wasn't just about strength or skill. It was about willpower, about proving that Earth's warriors could endure even the most overwhelming challenges. Sierra had learned this lesson through every battle, every bruise, every painful moment. She had learned that in the end, what made a warrior was not how many victories they had, but how they handled defeat, and how they rose again. As she walked toward the entrance of the final test arena, the large doors slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a vast expanse of terrain that seemed to stretch endlessly before her. It was a barren landscape, with jagged rocks jutting out of the ground and a sky that was dark and stormy. Lightning flashed across the horizon, illuminating the harsh terrain. Sierra's heart pounded in her chest as she stepped forward, her exosuit adjusting to the changing environment. She could feel the weight of the atmosphere, the intensity of the storm. This was no ordinary simulation. The weather, the landscape, everything about this place was designed to test her mental fortitude as much as her physical strength. This wasn't just a fight against an opponent, it was a fight against everything. A voice echoed over the loudspeaker, its tone flat and emotionless. Test 5, Endurance and Survival. You will face an environment that will push you to your limits. Your objective is simple: survive. Fail, and you will not leave this arena. Sierra took a deep breath, her eyes narrowing as she scanned the horizon. The wind whipped against her face, carrying with it the smell of ozone and rain. There was no turning back now. She had trained for this moment, prepared herself for the challenges ahead. She was ready. The first challenge came quickly. A loud crack of thunder rumbled overhead, and the ground beneath her feet began to shake. The storm intensified, and Sierra could hear the faint sound of something large moving in the distance. She didn't wait to see what it was. She moved quickly, taking cover behind a large rock formation as the wind howled around her. She could hear the sound of something massive crashing through the landscape, moving closer with each passing second. Sierra's eyes scanned the area, her senses alert. She couldn't see anything yet, but she could feel it. Whatever was out there, it was big, and it was coming for her. The ground shook again, and Sierra didn't hesitate. She sprinted toward another rocky outcrop, her muscles screaming in protest, but she kept going. She couldn't afford to stop. The storm was disorienting, the visibility low, but she pushed through it, her exosuit enhancing her speed. Every step brought her closer to the unknown danger that awaited her. Suddenly, she heard a loud, guttural roar. It was followed by the sound of crashing footsteps, as if something enormous was charging straight at her. She didn't have time to think. She turned and ran, her heart racing as the ground beneath her trembled. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw it. A massive creature, at least 3 times the size of the largest human. Its body was covered in thick, armored plating, and its eyes glowed with an eerie green light. It was a beast of nightmares, its massive claws scraping the ground as it moved toward her, its mouth open in a snarl that revealed rows of sharp teeth. Sierra didn't slow down. She could feel the creature's breath on her back as she ran, but she knew she couldn't outrun it. She had to fight, she had to stand her ground. She reached a cliffside, the only way forward a narrow ledge that ran along the edge of a deep chasm. The creature was closing in fast, its massive body thundering behind her. Sierra took a deep breath and jumped. For a brief moment, she felt the weightlessness of the fall, the wind rushing past her ears. But she landed hard on the opposite ledge, rolling to absorb the impact. She barely had time to regain her footing before the creature was on her, its claws reaching for her. Sierra didn't hesitate. She sprinted toward the edge of the cliff, her eyes scanning for something, anything she could use to her advantage. She spotted a large rock hanging precariously over the edge, just above the creature's path. She dashed toward it, grabbing it with both hands and pulling herself up. The creature, seeing its prey trying to escape, roared in frustration. It lunged at her, but Sierra was already swinging from the rock, her exosuit enhancing her agility. She launched herself toward the creature's back, driving her elbow into its armored spine. The creature howled in pain, but it didn't stop. It turned and swung its massive claws at her, forcing her to jump back. Sierra landed on the ground, rolling to her feet just in time to avoid another strike. She was faster now, more focused. She had learned to read the creature's movements, to anticipate its attacks. With a series of quick jabs, she aimed for the gaps in its armor, the joints in its legs, the soft spots beneath its massive shoulders. The creature roared again, its eyes filled with rage, but Sierra kept her focus. She was tiring, but she couldn't give up. Not now. The creature swung again, but this time, Sierra ducked under its claws and launched herself into the air, landing behind it. With one swift motion, she drove her fist into the back of its neck, hitting the vulnerable spot just below its armored plating. The creature staggered, its roar turning into a strangled gasp. It collapsed to the ground, its massive form shaking as it let out one final growl. Sierra stood over it, breathing heavily, her hands shaking from the exertion. She had done it. She had defeated it. The storm began to subside, the wind dying down as the creature's body lay motionless at her feet. Sierra took a deep breath, looking around the arena. The landscape had shifted again, but she didn't care. She had survived the first test, but there was no time to rest. The second challenge was already beginning. She wiped the sweat from her brow and moved forward, determined to face whatever came next. She didn't know what would happen in the next stage of the test. All she knew was that she wasn't going to stop. She had fought too hard, overcome too many obstacles to let anything stand in her way. The path ahead was unclear, but Sierra was ready. No matter what the galaxy threw at her, she would face it head-on with everything she had. She wasn't just a human. She was a warrior, a symbol of Earth's strength, and she would make sure that the galaxy knew it.